So we're going to be talking about music choices in films. How can you use music in certain contexts? Diegetic, it's part of the action, so examples if a radio's playing in the shot or in the scene. If the scene is taking place in a concert, the music you're hearing is actually being heard by the characters, so that's diegetic. And then non-diegetic is the actual soundtrack which is added in post. So those superhero films where you hear all the pumping music in the background, do the characters actually hear that? Probably not. Well, maybe, I don't know. We could maybe draw up an axis, so maybe someone puts on a radio, but then the music kind of swells and becomes much more dominant in the mix, and then it becomes really the soundtrack for what's going on. So there's a bit of a spectrum between diegetic and non-diegetic. But does this go far enough? Because as Nate said to me, this kind of prompted this talk, what about musicals? You know, characters burst into song, they're singing to music, which is the soundtrack, but they're not actually hearing it. So what do we do with that? So this is kind of my attempt to try classifying some things, and I don't want to do this as a kind of reductionist, you know, over-analysing stuff, but kind of just to expose us to, you know, what are the possibilities with music in film. So the two new categories I kind of like to introduce is participatory and non-participatory. So participatory broadly is, let's say it's the music leading what's going on in a scene. So the main character is interacting with the music in some way. Perhaps they're playing music, perhaps they're singing, perhaps they're dancing. So they're acknowledging the music in the scene, and the music is leading the scene. And perhaps the action and the performances and the editing themselves are led by the music, so cutting to music. So the music is kind of driving the car in this case. And then non-participatory is the music is serving. So the main character of the scene doesn't interact with the music, and the music is led by the action and performances and editing. So they come first, and then the music is done later. So now we can add another dimension, so participatory and non-participatory. And then here's the fun part, we can start to see where different uses of music in film plot on these axes. And notice the other aspect of the participatory in that the music is very much leading the scene here. Even the cuts are in time with the music. So that's the first quadrant. And then moving down to kind of between semi-participatory, diegetic. So this is an example from Shaun of the Dead.
David, kill the Queen. What's the jukebox? Liz, Ed, grab some weaponry. What about the rifle? It's not real. Oh, cocktails.
What do you mean?
The flaming spirits, Trambuie, Sambuca, brandy, get a racket. Light it. Look, the whole place could go up. What then?
How about pool?
Okay, John, it's time at the bar.
It's kind of semi-participatory because they don't want the music to be there, but they can't help but whack this zombie in time with the music. It's kind of like you can't help but tap your foot when a tune comes on. And it's obviously diegetic because it's coming from a jukebox, so it's very much in the scene. Now moving into this section, another funny example from John Wick 2. So the audience clearly think he's part of the axe, but When I'm talking about participatory, I'm talking sort of from the point of view of the main character. So you might disagree a little bit with some of these, but in terms of the broad sort of feel. So now, interesting examples. So between diegetic and non-diegetic and non-participatory. So this is quite rare, I think, but I just remembered this from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, that film that we all love.
Oh boy. I hate this song!
Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? So it's blurring diegetic and non-diegetic, because clearly Spider-Man can hear some of the melody, because he says, I hate this song, so it draws attention to it. It's non-participatory because he's not singing along to it, or he doesn't want to participate in it. And then now we're in this quadrant, which we're very familiar with. So this is music that the characters aren't participating with, and it's non-diegetic. So this is a score which has been written to serve the action that's going on.
Experience.
Hotel Kinski, kitchen boy, 6 months. Hotel Berlitz, mop and broom boy, 3 months. Before that, I was a skillet scrubber.
Experience 0.
Thank you again, Mr. Gustav.
Straighten that cap, Anatole. The pleasure's mine, Herr Schneider.
The stress busters.
These are not
I
acceptable.
fully agree.
Education.
I studied reading and spelling. I started my primary school. I almost finished.
Education 0.
Now it's exploded.
Nice, so moving around the circle, we're going in a circle here. So this is interesting. Okay, so it's partially participatory, non-diegetic music. So see what you think of this. So what's interesting about that is obviously that's music that wouldn't be heard on set, and yet it's kind of edited to look like he's moving in time with it. That's an interesting use. And now we're in this quadrant. So this is my kind of contention, is that to come back to the Singing in the Rain musical, what is that? I'd like to argue that a musical is where there's non-diegetic music that the characters are participating with. So non-diegetic in that it's music that you don't see where it's coming from, it's clearly not within the world of the film, and yet the characters are singing along to it. So let's take a look at this.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again.
Yeah, so there's a full orchestra playing. Can we see that orchestra? Nope, but yeah, the main character is singing along to it, and yeah, this is, people either love musicals or hate them. Like, why are the characters singing? Yeah, it's an expression of his joy, isn't it? That he's just sort of bursting into song. And then moving round, this is semi-diegetic because you do actually see some of the instruments. So we'll play this. Yeah, now moving back, obviously back to Whiplash again, just to show you that we've kind of gone full circle, so we don't need to watch that again. From Baby Driver, obviously, and I think what was exciting about that film musically is that it managed to occupy that middle space in the axes, because It's blurring diegetic and non-diegetic because on the one hand the music is playing through his headphones, so it is within the scene, but yet it's kind of filled out to become the actual sort of score of the film. It's blurring participatory and non-participatory because you could argue that the music is motivating all the editing and performances there, but you could argue that it's serving them as well. So it somehow managed to hit that spot, I think, which was quite cool. Yeah, and then what's interesting is we can then start to think, okay, well, what within a scene do we see movement along this space? So here's an example from The Social Network. So it's all non-participatory, but we go from the score, the non-diegetic music, to this violin playing that's actually happening in the scene, and it's in a different key, so there's a nice dissonance there because this is right at the beginning after a breakup. So that's an interesting journey. Oh, we look at some Bible verses because I think we're Christian, apparently. When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives.
Diegetic participatory?
Yeah. There we go. So yeah, it's just quite interesting to see some of these and compare them to films. Praying with my spirit and then singing with my spirit. You know, what is that diegetic? Is that real sort of singing, or is it more a kind of internal type singing? And these are kind of spiritual dimensions that might come across in films as well.